We'll see how this works. Welcome to the April 27th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. If you have cell phones or pagers, similar devices, if you would either silence or turn those off now, we would appreciate that. If you are not the applicant and you've come to speak to us about a case today, sheets like this are available on the table right outside the chambers, and if you complete it, identify the case, and many of you have. We'd be happy to hear you when we hear the case. And with that, we will go to receipt of the minutes.
Move to receive the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the receipt of the minutes. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Next, we'll go to continuance requests.
Yes, we have several requests for continuance. We have 3 uncontested requests. Item B10 on your agenda is case C6889 is going to be deferred to May 11th. Item B11 for case SP 492 to defer to May 25th, and case B12 SPUD 965 deferred to May 11th.
Anyone come today to address us on any of those particular cases? Just read. Commissioners?
Move the continuances.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the continuances. Cast your votes. And those are approved. Additional continuance requests?
We've had some new continuance requests. Case A3, which is C6886, to defer to May 25th. Item B18 on your agenda for case PUD 1642 to defer to 6/22 or June 22nd. And item B21 for case C6892 to defer to May 11th.
Anyone here to address us about any of those cases?
Did I hear you say B18?
B18 for PUD 1642.
Mr. Groves, you must have?
B18.
You must have
Mr.
one you want to
Chairman,
talk about?
members of the Commission, I'm Eric Groves. I represent the applicant on items number 19 and 20. We didn't anticipate this, but there's only going to be 6 of you here today. And if I had my druthers, I'd like the whole Commission to hear this if possible. I think you all know what the issues are. I'm wondering if we were to request that it be continued to the 11th, would the Commissioners be here, or are there any anticipated absences?
I'll be here on the 11th.
Move approval.
What?
Huh?
No. The question is, will you be here on May 11th?
Oh, yes.
Pat? Jim?
Yes.
And that leaves Mike Hensley.
I think Hensley will be here.
Hensley and Lee Cooper, who was stuck with a plane cancellation in Milwaukee, or he would be here. So your odds might be better if that's what you want to do.
I think my odds are, I have to get 5 out of 6 today. That's, I sort of feel like a thunder going down to Houston. I think my odds are better with the full Commission.
Well, if that's a request.
It is a request.
Okay.
So 19 and 20,
Yes, Commissioner. It's a map amendment case and a PUD taken together.
Okay, we'll include that.
Okay.
And Brian is standing behind you, Eric, so if you'll step aside.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, Brian Coon, representing the applicant on number 8. I have to have 6 out of 5 votes, and that's not going to work at all, so I'm going to request a continuance also because I need a variance.
There are 6 of us here.
Well, I know, but one of you is going to take a slight break during number 8.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
So I know I can't get 6 out of 5. I can try, but it'll be a waste of your time and mine.
All right.
Number 8 to the 11th.
Continue to
11th?
511.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, I think we've got several here in item 18.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah.
Several of you have signed up on case 18 today, and it's been proposed that case be continued. I want you to be aware of that before we vote. And if you have something you want to say about whether you oppose the continuance or not, we're not going to argue the case. We're talking first about whether we'll continue it or not. So if you have an objection to the continuance, please feel free to tell us.
I have talked to one or two people, and I'm the one that requested it to be continued because I could not support it the way it is. I cannot support it until we get a neighborhood meeting. It's not a policy, well, it's an unwritten policy maybe, and he has not done that. And I told him that. I asked him to continue it. I didn't think, I guess it was a last-minute continuance. So that's the reason for it being continued. I requested it.
We're going to include that in the group of additional requests. And are there any other requests from Commissioners? Janice, you had one, I think.
We were going to pull 4 off of the consent docket
Okay.
to discuss.
Right. No other continuance requests, though, right?
Not that we haven't talked about with the applicant.
Okay, we'll take that. Can you read that, Aubrey, once more so we know what we're voting on and the public does too?
Yes, sir. So item A3 is C6886, B18 for PUD 1642 to June 22nd, and B21 for C6892 to May 11th.
And we're
And we added
continuing 19 and 20.
and 20 to May 11th.
So,
And number 8.
And number 8, so I didn't do a great job today. Continue to
number 8
511.
Number 18 is June 22nd.
Yes, June 22nd on number 18, and May 11th on number 8, 19, and 20, and 21.
Okay, Commissioners, we have now assembled the additional continuance requests. 9 is not mentioned, correct.
And then we've got people signed up the next one.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Did you still want to say something?
I would like to say something briefly.
If you do, come to the microphone, give us your name and address, please, and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Stephen Hills. I live at 17724 Southeast 59th Street. I have a vineyard out there, and I just want to say this zoning proposal, I strongly oppose it.
We're not going to talk about the zoning today. I mean, if we're continuing it, we will.
Oh, I apologize, sir.
We will discuss the case then, as opposed, because you'd have to come back and tell us the same thing all over again.
I promise I will.
Well, I promise we'll listen then.
Yeah, and I would like to thank Lance and his team for being so gracious to us.
Okay.
And Mr. Allen, too.
We're glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, then, thank you, sir.
Chairman, I'd like to, how many people came to hear this application? Just stand up, just raise your hand. Anyway, we always are very sensitive to that. You know,
Not near as many as I thought.
But I think that what Commissioner Allen has requested of the applicant to get with you guys and let's work something out. If you can't, well, then you come back in 2 weeks.
Yes, sir, we would like that.
Great, okay, good.
Yeah,
One thing I'd like for you to do, if you're not contacted within the next week, give me a call and we will try to get that done.
yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, sir, ma'am.
So now we're back. Do we have a second? We do. Okay. In that case, we'll vote on the additional continuances. Cast your votes. And they are all approved. So, pardon?
Okay.
I'm not hearing you.
A3, do you want the item number? A3,
Just the agenda item number.
B8, B18, B19, B20, and B21.
20 and 21 both.
Sound like I'm calling bingo.
What are they, when are they going to be
The
continued?
dates, A3 to May 25th, B8 to May 11th, B18 to June 22nd, B19, 20, and 21 to May 11th.
19, 20, and 21 to when?
May 11th.
May 11th.
Now we're ready for the consent docket.
Okay. Items on consent are, the first one is PC 10495 to rezone 1401 Northeast 8th Street from C3 to R2. Item 2 is CE 954 to close a fire lane easement. Item 4, since we continued item 3, is case ABC 881 for an ABC2 overlay at 3515 North Classen Boulevard.
Janice wants to hear that in order, pull it and hear it in
Yes,
order.
I'd like to have item number 4 pulled and heard in order.
Okay. So the consent docket, Commissioners, is items 1 and 2 on the agenda.
Move the second to the
Sorry?
second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Cast your votes. And that is approved. And we'll hear items in order, starting with number 4.
Number 4 for ABC 881.
Is the applicant here? Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Jerusalem Yamlak Fikard. My address, home address 15313 Cardinal Nest Drive, Edmond, Oklahoma. The business address will be 3515 North Classen Boulevard, Oakland City. Zip code 731118.
And you're planning to open a restaurant and lounge?
Yes, the cafe lounge. We will be serving food, mainly like in the morning. Will be brunch. We will open for brunch, and in the afternoon for dinner, we'll have different ethnic food, including Ethiopian. I am originally from Ethiopia, so the main plan is to bring different culture together. And so the reason we applied for ABC2 is because we did some research for restaurant businesses, and mostly just restaurant by itself doesn't last more than a year, based on our research. So including the alcohol will help for the business to stay for longer, and we're planning to stay on that area for a very long time, as long as our business is successful.
I understand you've met with the neighbors, or some neighbors have met with you. And
yes, we did.
They've got concerns, including things like hours of operation.
Yes.
And there's been a suggestion that maybe you should apply for an SPUD.
Yes. Yeah, we did. The reason we prefer to stay open until midnight most days is because it's not just normal restaurant only, it's a lounge. So we want to give people option if they want to stay watching sport or other activities. Like we planning to have art events, like a gallery for the people who want to show their art. So we don't want to limit the hours before midnight most of the time. That's why.
Well, ABC2 allows you to stay open until 2 a.m., and I don't normally see people out buying art at even 11 o'clock at night, never mind 1 or 2. You might want to consider the SPUD approach. Janice?
Mr. Chairman, I'm pretty sure there are a number of people, neighbors, who want to be heard on this application as well.
Well, we do have 3 people signed up. We'll hear from the neighbors, and we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Billy Brown? If you would give us your name and address, Billy, please, for the record.
Billy Brown. I live at 1419 Northwest 34th. It's been a long time since I've presented before a commission, but I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak. I'm one house removed from where the business is going to be in the strip mall, and, you know, I'm just very concerned. The noise level that we currently already have is a lot, and I think this will only increase it. It'll increase the traffic. It'll increase the foot traffic. And I just, in general, think it's a bad idea to have alcohol served past a certain time for a restaurant. I mean, what the concern for me is when it turns into the lounge. And, you know, we already have a lot of noise. And like I said, 2 historical homes back right into their, you know, they're right there behind them. And so I am here today to oppose it, and I hope that, I don't have a lot of technicalities, and I know Janice has met with them, and also Suzanne and a group of our neighbors, but I know 2 neighbors personally, and the one behind me is totally against it because his yard does have access right there to the parking lot at the back. So I'm asking all of you to vote no. We are opposing it. And maybe the option that you mentioned that they might change their mind about applying for might be something different. But a lounge staying up until 2 o'clock, I mean, nobody would buy a home I wouldn't have bought the home if a club had been there. So I hope you consider that, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Or?
Thank you.
Now, Suzanne?
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. And if you'll give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, I'm Suzanne Broadbent. I live at 3625 North McKinley, just around the corner from the proposed overlay. I have... What I'd like to do is put this application in a bit larger perspective. What you'll have in your packets are 3 articles or 3 documents. One is a newspaper article about Putnam Heights, just to explain, most of you know, I know, but it's good to be reminded what Putnam Heights Historic Preservation District is, where we are, and how important these districts are to Oklahoma City. In Putnam Heights, we back right up to the proposed alcohol overlay. And if you notice in your packet, there is a marked up aerial where I have put in some things that aren't indicated in the one that's in the official packet. And one of them is, of course, Memorial Park, just across the street from the proposed area. And the other one is Oklahoma City Beautiful, which offices right next door. And Jake's house. Jake Schatz is a neighbor who could not be here today. And we actually have several neighbors who could not be here today because they work and they have other obligations. So there are a few of us. Would you raise your hands from Putnam Heights? And, I think they've also asked to speak. I'll be brief. Putnam Heights is a small neighborhood. We're only, the historic preservation part is only 104 houses. Billy lives on 34th Street, which was developed at the same time as Putnam Heights Historic District. It was all the Putnam Heights edition. Those houses, too, are very nice, well-kept homes that people have put a lot of money and heart into. And the one newspaper article, I know that's a little bit off the beaten path to put in a newspaper article, but it's a recent one about what we've done in Putnam Heights with our medians, with a few other things, just to give you an example of how much we and the city and the Oklahoma City Community Foundation put into that neighborhood, and how what an asset it is to Oklahoma City. We put in $8,000 a year on the medians, taking care of them, and have for 20 years. We're embarking on a capital campaign to do some other things in the neighborhood. And those are just starters. I mean, we spend a lot more money on social activities and communication and things that, infrastructure that helps build a neighborhood. So we don't just sit back and say no. We don't want something. We work very hard to add value to the city, and we need your help in that effort. Because, you know, inner city neighborhoods are always faced with encroachment. And this is a really good example, I think, of encroachment on the value, the quality of life, all the things that affect a neighborhood. If you look at the one picture of a house that's in your packet, I apologize for my color printer. It's about as old as I am. But you get a sense of the houses that we have in Putnam Heights and how well cared for they are. The houses in neighborhood in Putnam Heights fly off the sales charts. Whenever something is for sale, it is gone almost before the sign is put up. People want to live there, and there's a reason. And that is the beauty, the quietness, the location, all those things have gone into making it a good neighborhood for a number of years. The problem with the ABC2 overlay is obviously noise, hours, all those kinds of things. I would like to flesh out just a little bit of the staff report about the intersection. Staff report, I know these have to be very brief, so I'm not taking issue, but I just want to flesh it out a little bit. The findings are, excuse my voice, this intersection is developed with retail, office, and restaurants. That's really a bit inaccurate in our view. It is mostly office north of 34th Street. When you go to 35th Street, just off of 35th Street, as I pointed out, is Oklahoma City Beautiful on the south side. So just north of this little strip is the beginning of a real pretty part of Classen. Offices, just a little bit of residential, and then, of course, Putnam Heights is right there. The restaurants, the really busy retail part of Classen is south of 34th Street. This little strip has a Sherwin-Williams in it. I've noted that. There's a beauty salon. And there is a really teensy little eating establishment, and it is essentially sandwiches. I mean, they come and go. There was a Subway there, and now then there was a Euro place, and now there's a taco place, but it's very small. My point being, it's not a largely developed area for restaurants. This would be a totally new introduction to this area of Classen. And of course, the city park is across the street, and a number of things that the city has invested in, and it's going to affect all of those things. The SPUD, we are quite willing to discuss that with the applicants. We're not crazy about it, but we understand we need to consider it if they do. But what we really would ask the Planning Commission to do is to help us by just denying this application, actually. You know, the zoning code, to go back to the overall picture of the zoning code, and this is out of Section 59-1150 of the Zoning Code of Oklahoma City, and the purpose of zoning and the purpose of the Planning Commission, I think, is to evaluate things to promote, I'm reading now, to promote the public health and safety, to prevent congestion of public transportation and lessen danger, to prevent undue encroachment, to conserve the value of buildings and encourage the most appropriate uses of land, and to encourage residential growth. So there aren't too many guidelines, as far as I know, that the Planning Commission has to go on, and it kind of boils down to common sense and what will work the best for the city and for the area that you're being asked to consider. In this case, this ABC2 overlay and what is being proposed do not make any common sense, as nearly as we can tell. We like Mr. Jerusalem and his partner Jeremiah. They are wonderful people. I think they have a beautiful dream, and we wish them the best. We don't think they will be successful in this small space for what they want to do, and the more that we talked with them, as Mr. Jerusalem kind of alluded to, or maybe stated more than that, the lounge part of this is going to be a fairly large part of it in the later hours. And so the more we talked with Jeremiah and Mr. Jerusalem, and the more we heard, the more it began to sound like a sports bar, party place, and that is not going to add to our quality of life. It's going to be a lot of noise, it's going to be late, and I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be a lot of dependence on alcohol to make the numbers work. Dr. Graham is going to say a bit more about that. The problem is, even though we think Mr. Jerusalem and Jeremiah are delightful people, we like their idea, if they don't make it, they're going to close, and we're going to be stuck with this ABC2 overlay, and we don't know what will go in there then. If they do make it, and they make it big, they're going to move, because it's a very small space, and they're going to need to move. And we will be stuck with this ABC2 overlay. And all the promises in the world by them will not hold. And once we get somebody in there that is not committed to the vision that Mr. Jerusalem and Jeremiah have, it's really difficult to address that.
Thank you,
and,
Susan.
you know,
I appreciate it, Suzanne.
Yes.
Dr. Graham, you got something to add? And we'll need your name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. James Gilbert Graham. I live at 4901 North Coltrane. I am the proud owner of Crescent View Veterinary Clinic, and we provided veterinary service for the metropolitan area since 1969, and almost every day has been fun. My wife and I also are the very proud owners of the building that is occupied by Oklahoma City Beautiful. We have provided them with a long-term lease with a significant discounted lease rate because we support what they do in our community. My concern is that we don't know what we don't know. And by that I mean, of course, we don't know how this is really going to pan out. We had the privilege of meeting with the two applicants yesterday and discussed a great deal what their plans were. And obviously, we don't want to just oppose a business to be opposing a business, but my concern is the type of business that they're requesting. I asked the gentleman how many people they expected to serve a day. At that location, they expected about 25 people per day. And then by one of the gentleman's figures, their experience was in the restaurant bar business that the average person spends $25 for food and $40 for liquor. Well, if you do the math on 150 people a week, that turns out to be $195,000 a year for food and $312,000 for liquor. Those figures right there don't jive with the applicant's request. So for that reason, I'm concerned about the traffic flow and the distance between their north wall and my parking space is about 30 feet with no barrier between it except a 2-foot wide of grass. So my parking spot becomes a target for their patrons. Now there's plenty of parking in that area except that there are 6 other businesses there, and during the daytime they will have a problem with parking, I think. Again, we don't know that. We don't know what they're really going to do business-wise, and they don't either. And they're investing approximately $75,000 to do what they need to do to that building to make it provide the service that they want to provide. That's a huge risk. But if you look at these numbers of 3 and 4 close, that's not a big risk at all. So for that reason, and I know you guys listen to people griping all the time, and we appreciate that, but that's what you're here for. And we appreciate your guidance. And I'm going to ask you one question. If you, individually, owned the building that I own, and if I was sitting up there where you are, and you were down here, how would you want me to vote? Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, if you want to come back up to the podium. Janice, while they're coming up.
Well, you know, I really want to see us move forward with this as an SPUD application. I don't think I can support a straight ABC2 at this location. I hate to just vote it down today and leave it at that. I think it would be beneficial for us to take the time that it would take to sit down and see if we can agree on hours of operation and so forth, and whether that would bring the neighbors, some comfort and perhaps reduce the protest. I don't know, but that's what I want to see happen here, and I've shared that with the applicants, and so maybe we can hear from them.
Okay. I mean, as the neighbors, they said, we met 2 days ago, and we discussed a lot of things, personal information and what we're planning to do on the business. I've been serving in the Navy the last 9 years. I'm still active duty. I'm a software engineer in Oklahoma, OSBI. I work part-time. There's not many software engineers around here, so I work more than 12 hours a day to serve this country and this nation. So I respect them, and I want...
You need to address us.
Yeah, I want them to be happy, and I want to make sure everybody's safe. I mean, I don't want anything bad in my neighborhood to come. So our business idea is not to disturb the neighborhood, to make sure we provide good service for the people who are going to come to our place, and also make sure we're not going to disturb the neighborhood. It's not just a business, it's just a personal to me, making sure everything is good.
I think the question is distilling down to, would you consider an SPUD or not?
We're considering the SPD, but just the time, like...
Yes or no?
Yes, we will.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to suggest probably a 4-week continuance to allow...
I think it will take us till the last meeting in May, at least, maybe the first meeting in June, but we've already checked with staff about the timing on that.
There's going to have to be some negotiation or discussion with the neighbors as to what the PUD would contain, and obviously their acceptance of it.
And I would like to invite all of them that are here today to come and speak with us and help us through that process. So,
and there are more neighbors than the people who've been able to come here today, so it should be an inclusive discussion.
So first week of June, perhaps, would be the best time?
That's June 9th. I have that date.
June 8th.
8th. Oh, 9th was my first free day.
So we'll agree to continue it until I'll make a motion then to continue it till the first meeting in June, the June 8th meeting.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to continue this to June 8th. Cast your votes. And it is continued.
I'll agree to make myself available to you and the neighbors, and we'll work this out if we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, under items for separate vote, number 5 is case C-6891, the final plat of Mustang Ridge Phase 3.
Good afternoon. Kendall Dillon with Craft and Toll, representing the applicant. This is the third final plat of Mustang Ridge. It's in compliance with the preliminary plat for standard TEs, and we'd ask for your approval.
No one has signed up, and it could have been on the consent.
But I have a question.
What?
Are you going to put sidewalks in this development?
Yes.
I didn't see that in the material. I just want to make sure that sidewalks are going to be included. So with that addition to the TE, I move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 5. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 6 is SPUD 969 to rezone 711 North Douglas Avenue from C1 to SPUD 969.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Seibold. I'm an architect and city planner representing the client and also speaking in support of the project. This is a change from a C1 to essentially an R3 with the limitations identified in the staff report. We're happy to see the staff report and all the comments, and we think they make sense. There's one design addition that we may work through, but I think we can accommodate it We'd initially anticipated a 4-foot fence, but in the application we indicated a 6-foot fence. We are happy to comply with the 6-foot fence, but there may be some design change or some other type of accommodation made to those plans. But otherwise, the staff report includes everything that we've requested.
Okay. Janice?
Will there be any signage on site?
Address signs.
The only thing about this application that really caught my attention at all was the parking, 4 spaces.
Yeah.
And is that really going to be sufficient to serve your needs, or are we just kind of?
We believe so. As a residential use, they're all efficiency or studio type designs. So there are some possibilities for some on-street parking on the the east end. We have not indicated those in the site plan at this point because we don't think the demand is enough. We're close enough to downtown, and essentially we're marketing these as limited, small-scale, kind of minimalist type developments. But there is adequate on-street parking in the neighborhood, but we do not anticipate using those spaces.
Bob?
Well, yeah, are these images representative of what you're going to put on that piece of property?
Yeah.
And is it, well, in the application is residential/commercial. What's the commercial aspect of this with what Janice says, 4 spaces to park in?
The idea is to allow some limited commercial, less than I think it was 1,700 to 1,400 square feet in the application, because we have a number of a movement across the country to have kind of live-work units. The potential would be if there were opening up one of these as a gallery. And we actually have 2 of the units that are adjoined, so if someone did want to have one, use one as an office, and use the other side as their residence, our plan accommodates that. But we believe that limited commercial would allow for and cover any possibility of an artist or someone using that space and using the side yard as a creative space or creative studio.
And is the lodging anticipated to be an Airbnb type of thing?
There's a variety of models that we're looking at, whether it's medium-term, short-term, or it could be a permanent residence.
Well, my overall editorial comment is that this area is ripe for something to be better than what it is right now, and I applaud what the effort is to put this kind of project together. And so, with that, I move approval of the application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 6. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 7 is SPUD 970 to rezone 6728 South Hudson Avenue from R1 to SPUD 970.
And your name and address, please.
Shane Murray, 18 West Park Place, Oklahoma City.
Okay, thank you.
I'm the architect for the project. I'm here representing the owner on this really public-private partnership. Several agencies involved in this, both city and public, and that's kind of why we're asking for the SPUD.
Listeners know when they're signed up. Jim, any comments on this?
Move approval.
That's a good comment.
Second.
For a motion and a second to approve item 7, cast your votes, and that's approved.
Item 8 was continued. Item 9 is C6887 preliminary plat of Twin Silos. This does require a variance to the subdivision regulations.
Good afternoon. Again, Kendall Dillon with Crafton Toll representing the applicant, and this is a preliminary plat for 167 acres. It have 2 commercial lots, yields a residential density of just a little bit over 3 dwelling units per acre. It's in conformance with your comprehensive plan, and it's our understanding that it's in about 99% conformance with the current zoning. However, I think staff this last week has discovered they think that there may be a very small sliver of land just north of the commercial that may still be AA. So that reflects in TE number 4 that we will rezone that portion prior to any final plat in that area. But again, if it's there, it's a sliver. Shouldn't be a big deal. But we're in agreement with all of the TEs. On TE number 3, you will see that we are asking for a variance to the street connection or stub to the west. The reason for that is, and it doesn't really show up on your staff report, but if you notice on this exhibit that there's already a developed subdivision immediately to the west. There was no connection or stub provided from that subdivision, and then there's also a FEMA-regulated floodplain between the two. So that's the reason that there's no need to put a stub, but I think we still need the variance. So with that, be happy to answer any questions.
We do have a couple people signed up, Commissioners. David Mackey. Sir, if you'd give us your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission, Chairman. My name is David Mackey. I live at 15400 Colonia Bella Drive. I am the president of the Vizcaya Homeowners Association. We are in the stand-up 80-acre neighborhood directly to the west of this proposed development. I'm here today, again, representing the 272 people that live in my neighborhood. We have several concerns we'd like to address. The first concern is I've lived in Oklahoma City for 5 years when my company relocated from Enid to Oklahoma City. I haven't driven on a worse road in Oklahoma City than I have on 150th between Rockwell and County Line. And I know this is a public works issue. My concern is, what is this additional, if you average 2 cars per house, an additional 1,000 cars going to do to that intersection? That's concern one. Concern two is, as you know, we are right north of Paycom. And if you've ever traveled in that area around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you know that the Oklahoma City Police Department has 3 cars that basically shut down the intersection of Council and Memorial. That is the main feeder road to get to that neighborhood where this development is going to be, and that's where we live. After discussion with my residents in my neighborhood, we can't even go that direction because of the traffic gridlock. The third concern we have is we are already in a lower than usual response time. If you look at the Plano KC development map, I noticed one of you guys had this up when I walked in. Our concern is the addition of 500 new homes in this development could add not only to emergency response time, but also could increase all of our insurance rates based on this increased response time. I want to close by saying I'm all for economic development. I'm all for Paycom expanding. That brings jobs to our city, and we all want that. We want you, as the commission, to help us. Like the young woman that said before me, we want you to help it keep us safe. We want you to look at this closely and do what's best for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Young.
Excuse me. My name is Jim Young, and I live at 15517 Pompeia Lane. We also live in Vizcaya, which is immediately to the west of the proposed development. A couple of quick things. Number one, and this is probably going to sound pretty snobby, but I don't care. My wife and I and our 2 boys moved into Vizcaya after a year-long process of custom building our home. We moved from about 3 miles south. We've lived in the area for about 12 years now. This is our planned forever home. The homes that they're proposing to build next to our neighborhood are not forever homes, unless I miss my guess.
That's not our issue or yours before the Planning Commission. I'm sorry to tell you that.
And while I totally understand that, here are a couple of concerns about the development itself.
That's what we want to hear.
First of all, as David pointed out, 150th Street is not in fabulous condition, and Council Road, just to the east of the subdivision, not necessarily ideal either. Given the amount of homes that you're talking about, and I also heard rumor of some sort of Section 8 housing included in this. Is that accurate? Forgive me, I don't.
Not to our knowledge, but again, that's not our purview.
Okay. So, sorry. Anyway, the questions I would raise are, number one, are you prepared to widen 150th Street to 4 lanes and/or repair 150th Street going between Council and County Line Road and/or between Council and Rockwell to accommodate what appears to be a large number of new residents and some commercial businesses. Number two, there's a question about how is the developer going to handle the water runoff, and how is that going to affect the green belt and everything in between. And while I can understand that it's strictly a developmental issue, I would ask you all to take under consideration if you lived in the neighborhood we lived in and the people across 150th from them, if you lived in the neighborhood they lived in. I realize that it's a convenient location. It's a mile north of Memorial Road, right off the Kilpatrick Turnpike. It's, if I understand reading the tea leaves right, it's in the Deer Creek School District. Extremely attractive locale. I totally get that. But would you want someone to drop a whole ton of brand new, smaller houses in there and bring a whole bunch of traffic your direction?
You're off target again. I'm sorry.
I understand. I understand, and these are our concerns.
Thank you.
Do we know whether there are any planned improvements on either of these section line roads?
I don't. It would be in the either 07 bond issue or a new bond issue coming up, and it would not be our responsibility as the Planning Commission to deal with that. That's a public works issue.
I'm not aware whether there is or isn't, but again, I'll just remind the Commission that it's in conformance with the comprehensive plan in regards to response times. It's currently zoned R1, and then again, we have the impact fees, so one thing that will differentiate us from the development on the south, the west, and the north is that we will be paying in to do some improvements for the streets, those impact fees, which everybody else driving on at this point has not. So,
and you'll have to meet the drainage ordinance requirements.
And all of the engineering drainage ordinance we will meet. So, be happy to answer any other questions.
Is all of your common areas at all in drainage or in a flood area?
No, not all of it.
How much of it is?
Well, and I couldn't tell you exactly how many acres, but on the far, that separates us from this guy by several hundred feet, that is floodplain there. So that fringe along their west boundary, our west boundary, is drainage area. Then if you'll notice, kind of, you can see the pond there that sits kind of in the southwest corner. Outside of that, the rest of it's not drainage related.
So none of that running through diagonally through the addition?
Not drainage, no. There's a power line that runs through there. So some of that's utilized for that power line, and then we've obviously got some additional common area that we're utilizing next to it.
Where do you plan on putting detention?
Detention currently is not required.
Not required.
But again, not required, but again, we work with Public Works, and like I say, everything TE number 1 on every staff report is that we'll meet their requirements.
Okay.
Well, and you've carved out a significant amount of your common area to recognize some of that drainage area between the two neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Two developments. Okay.
Here's my difficulty with this application. Other than a sliver of land that's zoned agricultural down at the bottom someplace, it is zoned R1 for some odd reason. It's zoned R1. But in the past, we've also, even though that is zoned R1, when you put it in the context of what's around it, there's obviously a dense development just to the north, that little, so you're compatible with that little bit in the north, but the compatibility stops there. It's not on the west, it's not on the south, it's not on the east. And then when you have that many people, 2 cars in every garage, perhaps, there's 1,000 cars potential going out on 150th Street. I'm not sure that they would go out on 158th, but nevertheless, there's these, along council, et cetera. So there's traffic study issues, compatibility, the status of the infrastructure. You did say that you would do the fees, what are they, the impact fees.
Fees in the, yeah.
Relating to, I'm not sure what, but impact fees that we have are so dinky that they really don't really do justice. There's an issue of the density of this project.
But the zoning's been done, Bob. The zoning has been done. This is a preliminary plat.
That's what I said at the very first. It's been done.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Yeah. Well,
but even though it's been done, even though it has been done, if you put something in there, and we've dealt with this over the years, if it's not compatible with what's next to it, if it's like, I don't know what that rule is, so there has to be 70% of the one, next to it. What's the size of the lot? Isn't there some sort of standard there of what you have to do?
That's a very low cap, too, and he meets it.
Huh?
It's a very low cap. He meets it.
I'm just saying, this is my problem with this particular application, and I don't know that there's anything I can do about it. That's really my problem, is that it's zoned R1. And for the people that live to the west, to the south, et cetera, whenever it was zoned R1, that's when you should have been raising your hand. But it is, and so those are my comments. And I think it's not compatible. I think it's too dense. I think there's traffic issues on 150th Street, all those things, and I just don't feel comfortable with it.
I have a question for staff. Sorry. The staff report identifies this area as urban low intensity, and the statement that's made there is that this typology applies to the least intensively developed areas of the city that still receive urban water, sewer, police, park, fire services. Is R1 zoning consistent with that? I mean, is that what R1 zoning would be considered the least intense?
Right. Typically, as you go up into the urban medium and urban high, that's where you would see things that would be zoned R2, R3, R4. But R1 is pretty standard for the urban low area.
Okay.
In fact, your comprehensive plan, I think, even under urban low, really accounts for densities from 4 to 8 dwelling units per acre, but some provisions made for other surrounding compatibility issues, so we're at 3 dwelling units per acre. I think we're completely compatible with everything. This guy has a slightly bigger lot, still zoned R1, and again, we're separated by several hundred feet from a floodplain. All traffic issues, we worked that out with the development impact fees. I know that there's issues and things as a community that we work through, but that's how we decided, at least for the first step, that we're going to resolve these issues. And again, the one thing that you'll get with this development is there'll be a pot that the impact fees start collecting for our impacts on the surrounding neighborhood streets and arterials. So we are mitigating for that through that process that all the powers that be have established. It's already zoned R1, so I don't see how that it would not be in complete conformance with the comp plan as well as the zoning.
Well, I recognize that it's in compliance with the plan. I'm sympathetic to, and Pat knows as well as anybody, because this is Ward 8, and it has developed much faster than some of the infrastructure that was necessary to support it. And that's been a pattern in that area for 20 years or more. And the city is trying to do catch-up when it comes to things like widening 150th Street. But the development's gotten ahead of it out there, and it would not be fun to have to manage that kind of traffic flow out there. But at the Planning Commission stage, our issue is land use and how it's zoned, and we don't have the ability to say, no, don't do this until 150th Street is zoned. That's not something that's within our ability to do statutorily. So we're compelled to meet the codes that are on the books. Any further discussion, commissioners?
I move approval.
We have a variance first.
Okay, variance.
Variance to TE3.
Okay.
Second.
We need a second. I need a variance.
I'll second.
Okay, this is for the variance to TE3. Okay, and Jim's seconded, so we have a motion and a second to approve the variance. Cast your votes. That's approved. Pat, do you want to approve the case?
Approve the whole plan.
Need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of item 9. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Items 10, 11, and 12 were continued. Item 13 is case SPUD 971 to rezone 1009 Northwest 49th from R1 to SPUD 971.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Tim Johnson. I believe the packet you received has a protest letter. It's my belief that that protest letter was issued prior to the time in which we had a neighborhood meeting. The purpose of our SPUD is to allow some parking with the already zoned development that's going to be happening at 50th and Western. You'll have the new hideaway that will be there on the corner, and then you'll have future retail here, an office building here. So again, the limits of our SPUD is just the red outline. When we sat down to meet with the neighbors, and Commissioner Powers was there with us, this site had a lot of history with the neighbors, with some old zoning cases that dated back to when Chesapeake owned this. And so there was, I think, some frustration perhaps with the things that had happened in the past. Our clients are local developers that have since acquired this site from Chesapeake. I think once the neighbors realized who our clients were, I think they were more comforted. You will notice that there is a house immediately to our east. So what we presented to the neighbor were two options. One option where we'd have the 8-foot brick wall basically on the property line, and then landscaping on our side of the wall. We gave it to her to pick, and so what she chose was we'll have the brick wall right on the other side of our end of our pavement, and then we will landscape what essentially would look like her yard on the other side of the wall, so on her side of the wall. And in addition, we were able to jog the wall slightly at her request to save an existing tree that's there. So with that, she was comfortable, satisfied with what we've done. It will be a solid masonry wall, 8 foot tall, again with landscaping on her side. It's our belief that the rest of the neighbors were also satisfied. They understand that this is going to be a successful development. This helps alleviate potential impacts with patrons parking along 49th rather than parking here. So we do have a SPUD that's very limited. It's an R1 base, but it limits the use to the parking lot. So with that, we believe we've satisfied the neighbors. It's our hope that any concerns that they may have had have been addressed, but we'd be happy to answer any questions. We do agree with both technical evaluations.
Well, no one has signed up. Janice, do you want to either comment or make the motion?
I will move approval. I did not expect that there would be anyone appearing today. When we met, the neighbors kind of thrashed through what their issues were, asked their questions. I think we're, for the most part, satisfied with the answers. And subsequent to that, the young woman who lives immediately adjacent to this property was not at that meeting, but the developer, has met with her and back and forth to get this design right. And this would not be my first choice for this property, but it is what it is. And I think the reality of it having been owned by Chesapeake and part of the sale of the property is that it's now too valuable to be residentially developed. It's not a question of if we deny this, is somebody going to come in and put a house back up here. I just don't think that's a realistic expectation. So I will move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 13. Cast your votes. It's approved.
Thank you.
And I don't say it probably often enough, but I will today. I really do appreciate the efforts that have been put into meeting with the neighbors and assuaging their concerns, and in particular with the young woman who lives right next door. I think they've kind of gone the extra mile to make sure she was comfortable with this as a neighbor.
Okay, item number 14 is SPUD 972 to rezone 1313 and 1301 Northwestern Avenue from SPUD 861, C4, and CBO to SPUD 972.
Good afternoon. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates here on behalf of the applicant. This is a interesting piece of property. As anybody who's driven by here, there's a very bright blue building, very tall, older home that's been converted to a law office. It's the only building left on this tract. A previous SPUD was submitted, 861, but after approval, they realized that it really didn't work with their development plan, and so we're back combining the south property with the north property to create, excuse me, to create this developable tract. We have met with the neighbors. We had 2 separate meetings with the neighbors. The first one was well attended, 12 or 15 people there. We talked a lot about traffic. We talked about some of the uses and some of the changes that they requested. We've made most of those changes. We called a second meeting, and we had 2 people show up, and we again went over what the result of a traffic impact study that we did, even though we didn't have to. We performed a traffic impact study just to see if there was anything we could do to improve this unique intersection. As you know, traveling on Classen, you can float off southbound only to 13th or towards 12th from 13th. Your northbound on Western has to go east to the signal, and so it's a little bit of a convoluted intersection. We counted cars, we did traffic impact, and every proposal we tried to run included a left turn on 13th to northbound Classen. We looked at adding a right turn lane. We looked at adding closing off the southbound exit off of Classen, and none of those added anything to the traffic situation. We shaved off a couple of tenths of seconds in the delay time. It's not a hugely busy intersection. It just during peak, evening peak is the key. I personally sat there and counted the evening peak cars one night, and we had no cars on 12th Street. It was just a couple of pedestrians walking through there. So probably the biggest concern is the speed of the traffic exiting Classen going south. They have to yield, and it appears that they come off of there pretty fast. So, but we explained all that to the neighborhood, and I think that they understood that even if we could do something, it wouldn't benefit them. Part of the issue and discussion from the neighbors was concern about the alley. We initially talked about closing a portion of the alley because it's being used as part of our circulation on this plan. The residents take access, some of the residents take access off that alley. We're proposing to improve our segment of the alley. The rest of the alley west is in really poor shape. Small cars bottom out in the alley. So it needs some work. There are a couple people with garages back there that take access. Trash service is not taken off the back. It's taken off the front. So the only traffic that alley gets is the residents. Anyway, so that's with regard to working with the neighborhood. We looked at heights and uses, and just to give you a real quick rundown. First of all, here's the tract, C4 to the north, which is the, just jumped out of my head. Sunbeam, thank you. We had some C4 here. This was previous C4 before it was zoned SPUD, little C4 to the south, obviously the service station over here. So a lot of heavier uses were permitted along Classen because it's a 6-lane highway. Our proposal is to reduce and limit the uses to very restricted commercial and office uses. This is the proposed elevation that was in the packet. The site has a tremendous amount of fall from west to east, so we're taking advantage of that, giving us a 3.5 level front with the limited restaurant use would be pushed towards the east, restricting any patio use away from the neighborhood, so the only patio could be on the east side of a restaurant. The retail use on the building to the south. The PUD allows, if it's determined during the development of this project, that they want to do some live-over work here. The PUD allows for that. The initial model doesn't show that it would be cost-effective, but they're looking into that. So we wanted that opportunity to be there. The way the property lays out, again, with the grades, we're able to utilize the grade split to create upper and lower parking area behind the retail building on the south. So it'll have 2 entrances. one for the upper level parking. So this neighbor will be looking out at a parking level. So the building's way out here, and this is parking, 10-foot screened buffer, and of course our site-proof fence. So the upper level parking drive is here, the lower level parking drive is here. The retail will have access at the back of the building as well as at the front of the building. And then the office uses here will have assigned parking. So we are providing enough parking to meet code on site by doing this. Signage. I don't know if you recall in the last case, this is the existing billboard sign that are on the property. And all of these are going to go away. And we are requesting, because one of our primary uses is a bank, we're requesting a small facing east EMD2 sign, 75 square feet, on the east, facing east, so it would only be visible from Classen. And so that's in the SPUD. And our lower level use has a single drive-through. You see on the site plan. Obviously, it's a bank with limited hours. We have a single drive-through right here. We've matched the 10-foot buffer. Staff had requested that we increase this to 10 feet, and we've done that. So we have the single drive-through here, and then take our traffic out through the alley. We think it's an excellent use of this vacant, ugly piece of land, turn it into something very unique, and it's a good-looking building that will be prominent with all the new development that's occurred with the Catholic Charities and the Sunbeam Home. This portion of Classen is really improving. With regard to the TEs, we agree with TEs 1 and 2, and then the TE 3 and 4 talks about the signage that we're asking for that one EMD2 sign to be built in as part of the building. Happy to answer any questions.
Tim, is the owner the same one, 861, when that was adopted not all that long ago?
Yes.
Are we dealing with the same owner still, or has the property changed hands?
It has not changed hands.
I'm trying to remember what the discussions were back then, but weren't there discussions about both height limits and the drive-through, or a drive-through, and wasn't there an agreement back at, 861 that eliminated the drive-through and capped the height at 3 stories and not 4? Am I remembering that?
I apologize. I was not involved at that time, so I do not recall.
Well, we've got some people signed up who may remind us. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But we'll hear from them. And Jason Sylvester first, please. And I guess I'll say welcome back.
Good to be back.
Give
Jason
us your name and address
Sylvester.
for the record, please.
Did you say that again?
Pardon me?
What did you just say? Sorry.
Would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. My name is Jason Sylvester. I live at 1121 Northwest 12th Street, which is the property directly to the west of the vacant lot off the southern portion of the alleyway.
Okay.
I want to go ahead and commend the developer and Johnson & Associates for working with us on all of the issues that we've had. They've been, extremely accommodating. We had a few issues with their final submission, and I just wanted to bring them up. Overall, I support the development. I think it'd be very beneficial to what the area is growing to. The first concern I have is the drive-through. As you had stated earlier, the original SPUD did remove the drive-through, and it also did limit the height. It was to 3 stories I don't really have an objection with the height thing, but the drive-through bothers me just strictly because of the traffic, the increased traffic that it's going to dump into the alleyway. And like Mr. Johnson had said, they're doing the development, and basically correcting the issues with the alleyway in their lots. But I mean, if we're going to speak realistically, the individuals going through the drive-through are not going to be turning left and then trying to exit onto Western. It's a nightmare to leave there, especially during the day. They're going to be turning right and trying to go through and exit off Klein and go north or south. And, I know it's out of their control, but the alleyway is in, terrible shape already. It's, brick laid, and, just the increased traffic is going to be a nightmare on that. And they have done what they could with their portion, but we can't control the other portion, nor, the city getting that development done and corrected. The additional thing is they've got their dumpsters shown. They'll be bringing in their commercial trash removal off of the alleyway, and, the way that they've got it right now, the only way for that trash truck to leave is through the alleyway the additional way. And if we all know about additional weights on design paving, just standard brick-laid paving cannot support the weight of a trash truck over time without being damaged even more. So there's just concerns that I have about the existing alleyway, and I am one of the residents that my garage is accessed off the alleyway, so I have to use it every day, and they have done what I think they can to prevent the use from being increased on it. But I mean, realistically, there's going to be some high traffic, and I think that drive-through is going to raise that. My second thing is the EMD signs. I think that bringing those into this area is just going to set a bad precedent for the location. I think that it's just, personally, I don't think it's very tactful. I think that we see, the one over Byron's Liquor, things like that. It's very bright, and, with all the residences around, you've got a lot of light emittance and overcast at night and things like that. You'd be flashing like I'm going to have to look out that my window and see that all the time,
It's going to face east, though, and you're west, right?
Correct, except there's that convenience store right there. So, I mean, are you going to tell me that there's not light reflection off of the building directly facing back towards mine? That's my only concern with that. With the size it is, I don't think that it's going to be extremely, powerful or whatever, but, the residences over in the other side of Classen, I mean, it'll be facing directly at them. And, I think that I'm not against
there are also dimming requirements with EMD signs, and I'm not an advocate of EMD signs, as anyone who's ever listened to one of these meetings is aware. But the lumens at night are reduced dramatically, and the signs can be set to do that automatically.
That'd be extremely beneficial.
And that can also be measured. If there's a problem, they actually call the amount of light they measurement is nits, and they reduce at night, and that's done by ordinance. Things that if I were you, I'd be concerned about are, one, the trash pickup and when that occurs. In other words, you don't want it happening at 5 or 6 in the morning, backing up against your residence. So maybe one of the things you might want to ask for is that not occur until after, say, 7 in the morning or something, when people normally begin to wake up and go to work. The other observation or comment I have, and Tim may have already addressed this, is there was a way with curbing to guide the vehicles that come out of the drive-through and send them back to Western. And I can't imagine Tim's client wouldn't agree to do that. And then to make a turn down your direction, they'd have to climb over the curb and then go down apparently what I understand to be not very well improved alley at this point. I don't think people would make that turn. Certainly not very often, and maybe not more than once.
Right.
If they get hung up on the curb. Is that something, Tim, you can consider doing?
I mean, that'd be fine with me. I can't speak to the rest of the neighborhood, but me individually would be.
We've got someone else we'll hear from, but those are my thoughts with respect to the issues you've brought up.
Okay, definitely. One of the concerns that I did have is there's no elevations showing the view from 12th Street. I know it's going to be a split-level garage, and that, you know, basically adjacent to my house is supposed to be ground level, but, I mean, there's the design standards that are set forth on the buildings and such for the brick and everything else, like, will those also carry to that garage, like, or, you know, is there potential to have just a concrete garage structure and no, you know, blending of the facade with brick or things like that?
Tim's nodding like he wants to help you, but he'll have to get up and tell us.
That was more of that was more of a question than anything, so I'll let him address that. But those are the only issues I had. Okay. So
thank you for coming down. Jessica Thompson.
Before we hear from her, I want to ask Tim a question about the signage. The staff report is a little bit puzzling about the way it deals with your signage. It talks about it being a non-accessory sign, which means that it could be used for any purpose, not just the bank. And that's a problem for me. Actually, the EMD sign is just a problem for me, I'll just tell you honestly. But the SPD shall permit one non-accessory sign to remain. So, I mean, that's kind of odd language, but I understand that you're talking about just this 75 square foot.
Just that 75 square feet.
Even that is a problem for me, I'll just be real honest. I don't like the idea of introducing EMD signage to this area of the world. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's necessary. But also, this issue of, and I apologize that you get to deal with this because you're here, that this has so recently been negotiated as another SPUD that limited the height 3 stories instead of 4, that, made a concession that there would be no drive-through, and now there is one. That's just really problematic for me. The gentleman who just spoke, on the aerial, you see it on on this map that we have in our packet, it shows that lot as vacant or empty. But that's actually new construction.
Correct.
Right there. I'd like to know what kind of a site-proof fence and, let me just say, wall you're going to put up along there. I like the increased landscaping, but, you know, this is new construction in this area. This is a significant investment in this little area of the world. And the idea of it having a parking garage next door is a little difficult.
Well, I wouldn't classify it as a garage. It's 2 parking levels. They have 2 separate entrances. There's no circulation inside the garage or the structure. From their perspective or their vision, their view would be it's a parking lot with a 10-foot buffer and a site-proof screen. That the ground slopes so quickly to the east that, to answer the question about the facade on the outside of the, you'll see very little of the garage as it goes east. It'll, by the time you get to that driveway, the dirt from the site will be sloping down. So that's why we show it as green and landscaped. The underside of that structure, that lower level, will be pretty much buried until you get to the point that you enter and exit right west of the building. And to respond to his comments, I think the diverter out of the drive-through could easily be done. We would be happy to limit the trash pickup to between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and add that to the PUD. One thing I do want to comment on the last SPUD that was done that we weren't involved with, the elimination of drive-throughs was more broad. It wasn't specifically restricted to a bank. In this case, we're not going to have a drive-in restaurant or drive-through restaurant or cleaners. It's specifically restricted to a bank use, which has limited hours, as you know. And so that's what makes this different. And I think that the concern about the height of the building, as Mr. Sylvester said, he really didn't have a problem with the additional height, but they restricted it to just 3 stories, and with no height restriction. We're proposing a specific elevation on the building. And so that's why it makes it a little different.
I don't see the setbacks addressed on the south side here. I mean, I get you've got a drawing, but the maintenance of the parking line on the south side as consistent with the residential setbacks, I think was a specific point of negotiation, was it not?
I'm not understanding your question, I'm sorry.
The distance for the parking along the very south side there, the distance from the street, it being consistent with the residential
Yeah, we
setback.
matched that.
Yeah, but I don't see that reflected in the document I have.
We can add a setback restriction to match the facades of the building. We did the same thing on the north block, too. There was concern. We had a double bay parking on the north, and we ended up pushing the building further north to align it better with the other buildings. And so those were compromises that were made early on.
I'd like to see that kind of more specific.
We can
spelled out.
clarify that. I think our master plan may have some dimensions on it, but we'll add it to the written document.
Okay. Ms. Thompson.
Jessica Thompson, 1414 Northwest 14th Street. I'm the Class of 10 Penn Neighborhood Association president. The neighborhood association came together and decided as a board and neighborhood association to vote, or we voted, that we would like the removal of the drive-through window due to the future use. So if the seller were to sell this building in the future, we wouldn't want to see dry cleaners or whatever else to come in because of the drive-through. And maybe a proposal with the trash can or the dumpster would be if you removed the drive-through, maybe move the dumpster there instead. I'm not sure how well that would work, but it seems like there would be enough room, and a bank can still operate without a drive-through. So that's one of the reasons why. The other one is to remove the electronic message boards. One of the reasons, too, for that is because Western from Northwest 13th Street South is currently a part of an organization called Maker's Mile, and so it doesn't seem like it's completely busy at night right now. It will be with all the development going in, especially with this restaurant going in on the 4th or on the rooftop. So there will be, we project that with the Maker's Mile as it kicks off, like the Plaza District, that it will become very popular. So the electronic message boards, that's one of the reasons why we're against that. In regards to the parking levels, if it's possible, if we could maybe pretty it up a little bit because it is in a residential neighborhood, or it backs into the residential neighborhood, if we could somehow add some kind of brick facade or something to break up all the concrete that will be seen, just because there's not a whole lot of concrete buildings or businesses in the neighborhood. It's mostly bricked, and if maybe we can give that a prettier look, especially since it is all concrete. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how to deal with the concrete look. I mean, it's a flat surface. Everything else will have brick facade to match the buildings. Anything you see on the south side will either be grass or brick to match the building. The parking area is flat. So I don't know what we could do differently. We can't make it out of asphalt because it's not structurally adequate. And I respect her comments, and the neighborhood has been great to work with. And, but this PUD would only allow it to be a bank. If somebody wanted to make it a dry cleaners, they would have to come back and do this over again. And the bank portion of this is very important to the project.
Well, I have 3 or 4 TE suggestions then. One, that the drive-through be limited to the use of a bank, and if it's ever going to change, they have to come back for it, and that'll prevent a coffee shop or anything else from being able to use that without coming back to the Planning Commission. Number two, I'd like to
see kind of what that's going to be, how that's going to be restricted. I think there also to be some sort of large sign, no right turn. I mean, whatever impediments you can do.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Yokel's idea of a diverter on the alley to require a left turn.
Like a curb, like where you're not going to go over it.
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to get there, Bob, eventually. I've got a list of 4.
No, I know, but I just haven't had a chance to tell, my 2 cents worth in on the whole thing. And I've got stuff to say.
Well, darn.
Bob, you ready to say it?
Yeah. Another T will be trash pickup will be limited to the hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Number 6T would be the semi-diverter to the east would be installed with a sign or an arrow, as Commissioner Bright suggests, to point people toward Western. And I think that's all I have on that.
The EMD sign, anything about that?
Frankly, while I'm not typically a fan of EMD signs, as you know, trading those 4 billboard faces for that small EMD sign is not that big a hill for me to climb. That billboard is awful.
And also, John, the last application on this would allow one of those billboards to stay there.
Yeah.
We couldn't get that rid of. But as far as the EMD signs, you mentioned reducing the nits at a certain hour.
That's in the ordinance.
Come down, you'll agree. So that should be a TE on the EMD sign.
Well, it's in the EMD sign ordinance. It's covered by ordinance now. Now the sign's automatically dim.
Okay, what level are you talking about? Level 1, 2, or 3?
We've requested a EMD 2, which is just the 8-second image, no moving.
No rolling?
No rolling, no moving.
Dancing girls or anything like that? Good. Okay, right.
Just information.
Well, and the other thing, too, I would like to compliment Tim and the architect. I think this is a pretty good development for Classen. It looks good. I like the position of the buildings on the street side. The parking is in the back. There's enough attention paid to the residents of the whole neighborhood, and, so... Tees.
Those are mine, unless anybody else has something. Janice is about to say something, I can tell.
The other question that I had, it was not entirely clear to me from what I was reading here, that the rooftop patio is limited to the 3rd story. I know that the design shows it that way and shows it on that eastern side.
It's in there that it's limited to the east side.
And that it's sort of been blocked from view by the building
Correct.
itself. But the way my staff report reads anyway, it's like 4 stories plus a patio, so I want to make sure that the patio is on the 3rd story, not on the 4th story.
It's, the patio is tied into the restaurant use.
I'd still like it
We
spelled
can
out.
clarify that before it goes to council.
So you want a TE that says the restaurant on the 4th floor will have a potential patio on the east side, which would be on the surface of the 3rd story, if at all.
Right. Right.
I'm with you. Not on the roof.
And did we talk about what kind of a site-proof barrier we're going to have?
We did not make that definitive at this point. It's just, it meets the city's criteria as far as meeting site proof. Do you want to make a suggestion? Do you have something in mind?
I'd like to see a wall. I really would.
A masonry wall?
I think that it's, yes. I think that this kind of a development is a significant enough break from the residential area to the west that I would like to see a masonry wall.
Can I ask the client if he's okay with that? I know you guys don't like to do these kind of things. I apologize. But that's an expensive request.
I know it is. I know it is.
Well, we've done what we always threaten not to do, is a lot of designing from the horseshoe, but here we go.
I don't have any place else to be today.
Other comments or discussions? Motion? You need to be to the microphone because first this is televised and second is recorded, and if you're back there, nobody can hear what you add.
No, he was just telling me what.
Well, there's a man behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to state the TE that she had noted earlier, you didn't mention again on the setbacks to match residential. That was the only.
Okay, thank you.
So it's the developer's understanding was that they thought that Mr. Sylvester would be okay with the wooden site-proof fence and the trees planted. Is that correct?
You know, I'm speaking on behalf of my wife as well, and I think she's here. But I think that we're okay with either the brick masonry or like was you speaking 8 foot or 6 foot on that, or 6 foot on minimum? That or my wife and I would prefer like an 8 foot stockade. Either one of those is fine.
Well, if you want something to last for a while, and I can tell you if you just say stockade, it won't last very long.
Yeah.
It's just not a good fence material.
Right.
Unless it's redwood or something.
Absolutely. I just trying to be reasonable as well, you know.
I thank you for that.
The way we've responded to that in the past on other fencing that other than masonry would be that we would agree to a 8-foot cedar fence on steel poles, and that gives you the longevity that you need, and we can add that as a TE.
This or this? We need to move on.
You're asking me if I'm happy with that? No, I'm not. I'd like to see a wall.
Anyone else want to weigh in on the fence so we can wrap this up?
We'd like to leave it as a wooden structure.
The wooden fence will last longer than the concrete fence. It's easier to get it repaired, replaced.
Okay. All right, well, we'll take a motion then with all of the TEs as previously noted, so I don't have to read them.
Move in favor of the application with the TEs that have been added.
Am I? What did you just say? I'm sorry.
Move in favor of the application with the TEs that have been added.
Except for 4.
And wait, the deletion of
we're deleting TE 4.
3 and 4. Yeah. 3 and 4, and then the other TEs that have been added.
We have a motion, second, to approve item 14 is conditioned. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Item 15 is SPUD 973 to rezone 10300 South Schooner Road from AA to SPUD 973.
Hello. Randy Malone, 209 Southwest 89th Street. This is Adam Lawson, the proprietor of the establishment in question. This establishment, we're not changing the use at all. We are adding the ability to sell mixed beverages. It now holds a Low Point beer. It's been there over 50 years, pretty much as a dance hall the whole time.
I would like to see a TE added to this, that if the pole signs, any of the pole signs, are damaged or removed for any reason whatsoever, they cannot be replaced. Pole signs are just a big problem for me, so I'd like to see that TE added. The other thing about this application that concerns me is that, you know, it's one thing to take a use that's well established, well recognized, you know, and sort of bless it and make it okay, and I get that, and I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it. But what we're really approving here, you know, is the ability for this location to be a bar in a big metal building with gravel parking, you know, forever. So whether it's this use or another use that meets that description, there's a world of difference there. But unfortunately, you know, our current zoning code doesn't really permit us to make that distinction. So So,
Here's my editorial comment on that, Janice, is that this has been in business for how long?
Over 50 years.
50 years.
And can you imagine what goes on in the parking lot? It's been a bar since it was opened. You have a bottle in your pocket. I mean,
basically, all we're doing is getting it in compliance. I mean, it's
Well,
been there. There's been alcohol there.
There has been 2 mixed beverage establishments there in the past. The most recent was about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So the addition is mixed beverages. There's probably been 3-2 beer.
Yeah.
That's a different level of alcohol.
I really don't have a problem with it. It falls under the category. I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 15. Cast your votes. It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 16 is PUD 1638 to rezone 5903 South Independence from PUD 562 and AE2 to PUD 1638.
Hello, my name is Steve Landis with Landrine Engineering, or Landrine Group, 201 West 9th, Shawnee, Oklahoma. Where do I begin on this one? We actually started this application, actually rephrase that, we started actually exploring this project back approximately October, November of this last year. First thing we tried to do when we did this was actually go ahead and meet with, like our client, or the developer actually is in the business of doing large convenience stores with some diesel sales as well. One of his existing locations is on Portland and Southwest 15th across from the Scenic River, and we worked with everybody to get that one taken care of. On this location, he'd come to me with the same kind of request, but wanted more space on the diesel pumps. So I kind of told him, do the location, we need to do a little bit of research. So I spent about a month or so trying to actually do the research. One of the things we did, there's a church located on the east side of Independence Street, right there off Southwest 59th. We actually sat down and had a couple of meetings with them. We actually tried to actually poll all the neighborhood associations. The problem was that none of them had an HOA, so it was a little bit of a challenge on trying to figure out how to actually get in contact with people. So we spent about a week trying to walk through the neighborhoods and try to talk to a few people. I learned as of last Tuesday we didn't get enough of them, but we did actually try to speak with a few. The hopes at the time were that maybe the ones that we spoke with would get back with others and we'd get a little bit more communication, possibly. But we tried to do, and we tried to incorporate into this proposal a lot of the comments that were brought up. Third thing that was asked for Mr. McAtee, after I'd spoke with him about this project as well, was to meet with the Airport Authority as well as Elaine Lyons with the Southside Chamber. So we actually set those meetings and did those as well. In fact, in the development of the concept for the property and the project, Elaine was the one who suggested some of the items, and we tried to work with some of the ideas of what was going on. We actually spoke a little bit with the Airport Authority. Part of their concern was how would this project appear and impact the proposed Lariat's Landing that would happen in the future across the highway. Third area that we actually had some concerns on and spoke with was DOT, at which point we basically kind of discovered that this whole intersection area is kind of proposed in the future for being revamped due to the Lariat Landing projects, and that they basically indicated that we should actually put any drives on Southwest 59th directly across from the overpass on the one street, and any drives that we actually put on the bypass road, we should keep them north of the off-ramp. They said that from what they had done on traffic studies, there really was not a tremendous amount of traffic on that terrace, but everybody has a tremendous amount of concerns with Southwest 59th. Okay, so, and I concur with that. So we all understood that. So anyway, based off the completion of that, we went ahead and actually put together the idea and sent it around and actually wrote the PUD and got it put together in January. First thing we did, I don't know if y'all have seen it fast, but we got staff comments back at the beginning and tried to make those adjustments, and then actually deferred it the first time on our own accord to see if we could get some more comments, to basically try to incorporate anything that we could get into this. Our developer basically was really more interested in looking at Track 2 and Track 3 as working within the community and trying to find needs for this community and try to see if we could incorporate those items into it. We tried to do, basically the church asked for the ideas that had come back to us were possibly grocery stores, restaurants that were not fast food, with excluding like a Brahms with a little neighborhood market, strip centers and certain items. There were always concerns at the beginning about the traffic on Southwest 59th, but other than cities' problems or concerns, we will be doing, if we keep this zoned, we will be doing a traffic study as required. I already had talked to a traffic engineer that's actually spoke with the city to go through what those requirements would be to assist in all of that. We actually came to the meeting the last time and basically discovered that there was a part of the neighborhood that we were not able to contact, or we did not properly. They were notified, but we didn't actually reach out to them as well as we needed to. So we actually tried to, as of last Thursday, try to go ahead and reach out to them and actually do something, but actually finding a venue became very difficult. So we were able to finally find a venue as of for this last Tuesday, or a couple of evenings ago. And actually that came a little bit unusual because we were supposed to be in the church, but we actually all managed to meet and speak in the church parking lot and actually hash through everything we were trying to do. During that time, some of the concerns were, we had actually shown, based off of comments from actually the chamber, that the ideas of hotels back there would actually potentially work as a buffer if we treat it much like scenic river approaches by, landscaping and doing certain things towards Independence to try to go ahead and shield the housing from that and not actually face everything to the front. After speaking with a few of the neighbors in that area, that was decided a bad idea. They basically said that they did not like hotels in that area. So therefore, part of our changes were they actually commented that some of the ideas that they would rather see would be potentially medical offices or restaurants. They see that there was a shortage of restaurants in this area, and so we actually communicated with them, and we actually made changes in this application to actually eliminate any chances of hotels in this area and to try to come back and actually replace it with more of a food service and basically limit it to only items that they specify. 2 or 3 of the other ideas that they've had was, of course, there is no driveways allowed on Independence, and we've actually talked a little bit about the buffering and all the landscape requirements, and I don't like the idea of a wall in this area because I just don't think it would be as appropriate because it ties up to a residential, but if that's a suggestion y'all have, we could definitely communicate on that. One of the things on a little modification plan that I think would also possibly be good is if we actually limited where there could be no parking towards Independence Street, being faced from the front. One of my new little modified drawings actually show a little bit towards the north end, but I think that could be revised pretty quick and easy. One of the other primary comments that was brought up by the neighborhood is that we had shown originally and actually had specified potentially 2 driveways on what is actually Independence or 55th Street. However, that's kind of spoken, in different ways right through there. And so one of the things we had talked about changing, and I think they were happy with this as an approach, was to limiting 1 to 1 driveway, and that any driveway had to be south, coming into that side of the actual church parking lot, driveways for the church. I basically wanted to leave it limited to that because Oklahoma City, of course, has their standards off of, separation from intersections, and I think as long as we keep it at that midpoint between there, we meet any standards required from the city, and as well create enough space off of Southwest 59 to allow cars to get in and out. One of the other things about this development we've tried to incorporate is everything has to be cross-accessed. The cross-accessing is designed to keep everything open to flow within the facility, as well as try to create potential patterns. One of the other items we've actually tried to do to actually guarantee that we come back to you all in the future is that we actually require that it is preliminary and final platted towards the end. Part of the idea behind that was in case during the development stages, well, 2 things. When you do cross-access, I always see the need of something on a document to actually specify. Even though the PUD has certain landscaping requirements, we can come back at a second date on that preliminary final plats and really get a little bit more defined on some of those characteristics. As well, even though the developer has actually done some nicer type of convenience stores, the size or whatever, I think that by going ahead and doing the platting, we can put specifications in those requirements that actually guarantee that we are a top-notch facility. Those are some of the other things, as well as any other development in there that we meet a minimum standard, which would meet equal to or better than the Lariat Landing approach and what the city and all the different organizations are trying to do. Other than that, we've tried to incorporate a few things that I think that the adjacent home or owners or property owners have actually liked. The primary big concern that everybody's had is the term truck stop. I want to try to clarify to everybody this was not a truck stop in the sense of a truck stop. Matter of fact, when Ron first came to me, he basically referred to it the same way, and I told him he was nuts. Oklahoma City would never allow a defined truck stop this close into the city. That's when we got into a discussion. What I've learned from the communication with him is that the whole market area has changed on this type of facilities. The On-Qs, the Loves, all of these type facilities, have Musket and have different type of corporations or tie-ins to their actual gas and oil, providers. Well, as a more of an independent person, you need to have a little bit of a niche to actually increase some of your sales, to actually compete with some of those larger providers. One of the ways he was looking at that, he needed, actually after speaking with him, he needed to try to show at least a 20% sales of diesel fuel. Now, on a full-fledged truck stop, the percentage of your sales is the maximum. Is basically you're trying to, actually more of your sales are associated with diesel than they would be with normal fuel vehicles. So that was one of the things we had. Another thing I've learned from doing with truck stops is people that would use a truck stop, if you cannot get into it, there's no real easy accessibility into it, they won't come. And so not only do you not market to those people, but if you actually have one that's really not accommodating, you're never going to get that kind of a crowd in the first place. So I think the way we've developed this facility, it really restricts the use of that large semi approach of ever getting in there in the first place. Some of the things on that design, anything coming off the highway would actually have to turn and come up that little kind of a boulevard that we created at the middle, which would not be very compatible with the idea of working within a truck stop type of an environment. Now, it is compatible for what our client is actually looking for, that little increase in peak sales, utilizing the potential of marketing towards the stockyards, and the primary one that he was looking at is the fairgrounds. This happens to be the primary route coming from the south for places that come in and use the fairgrounds. The two primary from the southern on the agricultural stuff would be 44 and I-35 coming around, and that's primarily his market area as far as to try to pick up that little bit of a niche that would be above and beyond. Other than that, he's primarily interested in trying to accommodate the needs of the adjacent community. Based off that, I'll try to answer any questions. I will say during our meeting last Tuesday, Ms. Powers actually attended that meeting, and I appreciate that more than you would ever guess. It's nice to have you all come and actually, even from my standpoint, take an active role and try to work with that right there, and it really becomes helpful from my standpoint. Thank you.
No one signed up, Janice.
No one has signed up. I'm surprised by that. I'm sure Ms. Lockwood's here and wants to be heard.
Don't see anyone.
I did speak with Ms. Sharon a few minutes ago. I actually asked her if she would actually come up and speak, whether she's for or against it. She said she was primarily here to listen. Okay. I hopefully that she's thinking that that's what that does, is it keeps me from saying something that didn't actually transpire in the meeting. So hopefully we're in concurrence on what I've tried to express.
If you have something to add, you need to come to the microphone, please. Otherwise, we don't get it recorded. Thank you.
So I tried to, or we've done our best that we can today to try to accommodate those needs. We do have a little bit of a constraint. Ms. Powers did bring up about wanting to extend it one more time, at least to try to go ahead and go a little further. I'm really not personally sure if that will actually help that much, because I'm not sure what other additional comments we could have that we could incorporate in. I feel between now and the preliminary platting stage, we will actually do what we can to work within the community and the neighborhood to accommodate their needs and desires. This is kind of what I consider a kind of a reconstruction of an area, and really the way this developer puts things together, it affects his business as well as the community around him, and if he doesn't do it right, it's going to adversely affect him as well. So based off that.
Well, I did join the meeting that the developer had with the neighborhood Tuesday evening as it kind of threatened rain overhead, and we were all sort of checking our phones to see how the thunder were doing down in Houston. But I cannot support this application the way it stands now. This is a large piece of property. It's kind of strategically located. It needs to be well planned, and in my view, it is not currently. The developer keeps reiterating that the large convenience store and gas station is not intended to be a truck stop, but as you'll see from your TEs, the staff thinks it is a truck stop. And I think from the things that they've said, it's, reasonable to conclude that. They want to service, large diesel vehicles, fairgrounds and stockyards. And I think that the director of the airports does have concerns, as are reflected in his letter, about traffic, and they worked very closely with the city about getting that laid out the way it works for them, and they're concerned about bringing that much traffic to this area, large vehicle traffic to this area, in a really tight configuration that at some point will have to be completely redesigned. It's clear, and Mr. Landis said as much, that this developer is concerned with his gas station. What happens to the rest of the property, he's not so concerned about. And that's a problem for me. That's not a good basis upon which to proceed with a PUD. They don't want to do a specific plan. We've talked earlier today about the dangers of zoning now and worrying about that later in terms of working things out between now and preliminary platting stage. I just don't think that this application is anywhere near ready to be voted on. And I understand that they have some contractual constraints, and that's unfortunate. But I think that the fact that they're having to rezone it indicates that anybody who purchases it will have to go through this process. So whether that's there or them, I think we need to take the time and make the effort to do it right.
Well, Janice, that was when I first read the application. I said, no, there's really some things here. But then I look at the TEs that the staff has put in, and, track 3, they want an O2 base, no hotel.
We've actually removed that. The one thing that we have tried to do, look at different on that, would be go back towards an O2 base. But based off the comments from some of the residents, they were actually more interested in more of the sit-down restaurants, even in that area, with all being faced towards the front.
Well, they requested that. And then the base zoning districts of 1 and 2 regulate the heights of structures. I mean, there's several mitigating factors in the TEs that I said, well, maybe so. But maybe we want to see what the thing looks like, Janice, with your comments and kind of your concern, all wrapped into another presentation in 2 weeks. Because I'm not sure you're going to get there with just 6 of us.
I have a problem. I mean, I understand that. That's what I'm kind of the same way. I'm not sure how to actually...
In the absence of a commissioner from Ward 3, I will volunteer to sit down with you and try to work out a plan that I think is a little more coherent and better represents what you're trying to achieve.
If that works with you, I'll be happy to try to do that. And I think I can convince them maybe if we do a 2-week to try to work on something like... I agree. Like you and I had even spoke. And I think I've emailed all of the revisions that we talked to each and every one of you, and I kind of felt like that was on, kind of pushing the last minute. I do understand. But the one concern, like I said, I have to try to get with them on this. Like I said, he's already actually had to forfeit some things, and then at this point, I think, the one concern that you brought up front, I think that will require it at that point. So if you believe that we could actually work through some of these details, I would think that maybe in the next couple of weeks, I think I could consider I'll tell them that's just the way it is, and I think that we could actually move forward with that approach if you do not believe that we can actually get the votes potentially to actually move forward with this.
Well, I know you're not getting mine, so.
Okay. Well, and we're limited to about 4, so I kind of need, or 4 or 5, so I'd have to, based off the majority, need some help.
So that's May 11th.
Okay. Is that better to actually one more time? Can we? Okay.
If it will make you feel better, I'll just do it. I'll move that we continue this case until May the 11th.
Takes me off the hook.
Will you do?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have a second? Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to continue item 16 to May 11th. Cast your votes, and it is continued. Thank you.
And item 17 on the agenda is PUD 1640 to rezone 6400 East Wilshire Boulevard from AA to PUD 1640.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Love. I'm a lawyer with the law firm of Cheek and Falcone. Our address is 6301 Suite 320, Waterford Boulevard, Oklahoma City, 73118. We present to you a PUD for an event center. It's designed to blend into what we call the Cross Timbers landscape. It's designed to be a beautiful facility that will bring the outdoors in. And we've bought a 20-acre tract with the idea of having minimal impact on those around us. We've centered our facility as best we can with the topography in the middle of that tract. I noticed in the TEs, the planning staff, and Lance has been wonderful to work with. We've met with him face-to-face and incorporated as many of his suggestions as we could that were affordable. The TE about designating the tree stands, that's very important to us. There was a fire that went through this area many years ago, and there were a lot of dead trees, a lot of dead cedars. Cedars aren't a good tree to have around a facility, so we did remove the dead trees and the burned cedars. We will go back in and spend a good deal of money planting large trees to create that wooded setting where the fire decimated the tree population. That being said, this facility is designed not to be seen from the road. We have one protest from Ms. Jenna Worthen, my client. Reached out to her last week when we learned of her protest. We wanted to have a face-to-face meeting. Folks went out of town. They were able to discuss Ms. Worthen's topics over the phone. She thanked us for addressing her issues of concern. As I understand it today, her largest concern has to do with things we can't control, like traffic and the use of Wilshire Boulevard. With those things being said, new to us is the TE number 1, which would require that we pull city water to the facility. That could be prohibitively expensive. We think a water well could satisfy this property's use. This is not going to be a facility that's open every day. It's going to be an event center. It's going to be a high-end event center. So its use will not be every day. It'll be as it's needed. Its primary function is a wedding chapel event reception center. If we were required to pull water from a city main, we'd prefer to come from Air Depot. It's much closer. It would be significantly less expensive. And I would like to talk to...
That'd be up to our water, wastewater, public works area,
yes.
Not us.
Right. I'm okay. I certainly understand that. With that, I'll open it up to the commission for questions, if you have any.
Well, I have a question or two, I guess. You want operating hours from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m.?
Correct.
That's a pretty long span of time, and it doesn't restrict it to any particular day of the week, as I understand it. It could be Sunday through Saturday.
Yes, and our thinking there, our business model there is corporate retreats start early. Bible studies for women especially who work start early. If the facility were to be used, for example, a yoga camp for a week, they would start early. Certainly your parties aren't going to start that early. But our idea to have the facility be available at those early hours would be for quieter activities, namely like corporate retreats, Bible studies, group yoga. Those things, especially for working women, and my client is a working woman, are hard to find, quite honestly. And that was our reasoning for being open so early. As to the 2 a.m. requirement, most receptions end at midnight. This will be a deal where if a customer rents this facility, their caterer, their crew is going to have to stay past midnight to clean up, and they need to be able to be there to do that, obviously.
That doesn't for the crew to be there cleaning up is not an hour of operation issue. You had indicated that you don't intend for the thing to be open every day. There's nothing in this document that indicates that it won't be. So what we've got to deal with is what's in black and white here, and it can be open 7 days a week from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m. So that's problematic. I have other problems. Did you want to go on with yours first?
Well, I think the traffic issue is significant as it relates to your application. The traffic that the neighbors would be concerned about would be the additional traffic that activities here would generate. And if this is an event center and intended for things like weddings, those tend to occur when neighbors are home, Friday evening or their Saturday or their Sunday. And that's when people want quiet enjoyment of their neighborhood, and that's when you're going to have potentially the peak level of activity for a facility like this. So, I mean, when they express some concern about traffic being increased at times inconvenient to them, that would be probably what they're raising. I mean, I started the 2 a.m. discussion, and that's something that I simply would not vote for. What are you doing about parking?
If you look at our design, Exhibit B, we have ample parking. There will not be any parking on the road, of course. And one of Lance's questions was, well, will you have one-way or two-way streets? And we're going to put in two-way streets so that traffic flow in and out of the facility will be quick and easy. So parking is not an issue. It's something that to provide our customer the service, there has to be more than adequate parking. With the overflow lot that you see to the east side of the property, parking is something that we didn't hear from the city staff to be an issue with them. We certainly feel we've addressed it.
Well, you're going to build at some point a building of a certain dimension. The fire department will tell you what the limits of capacity is.
And they have.
And
correct.
What is your plan?
Well, we're going to have to comply with the fire department.
Well, I understand that, but you've talked to them. Have you told them what the square footage is yet? Have you done that?
Yeah, on the Exhibit B, 6,000 square feet is our plan. I mean, okay. It says approximately, but that's our plan. So.
And how many parking spaces are you providing?
It was 120 or so. Just
total?
Right, yes, total, right at 120.
But the PUD does permit a future expansion of 12,000 square feet.
True, towards the back of the property. And that, we agree with that, TE, that would have to be under a completely separate plan if we decide to go forward with that. And again, because we've purchased a 20-acre tract and want this facility to be incorporated into the natural environment, then parking for if we build on at the back would also be incorporated. We would not limit the back development to the existing spaces. There would be additional parking that would be provided.
And the future expansion to the south puts a parking lot right up against the residential area immediately adjacent.
In response to that, Commissioner Yokel, you know, this is not a heavily populated area. There's not what I would call a neighborhood. There are individual lot owners out there. If there are no individual neighborhoods, the folks that did express concerns, we met with them. They thanked us for addressing their concerns.
You're talking about the staff now, right?
No, I'm talking about Mrs. Worthen, the neighbor. You were talking about the neighbor.
Okay.
You know, as concerns the traffic flow, the staff noted that our use is within the parameters that East Wilshire Boulevard is set up to handle. And we feel really strongly about the signs. The last TE number 4 was that we be limited to a monument sign 8 foot in height. Well, we asked for the ability to put pole signs as high as 15 for this reason. When you approach this property, if you're coming from the west, you come up a hill, and as you come down that hill, there's our first entrance. People are probably going to miss that until they become used to this facility's location. So we want them to be able to see the second entrance. We do not want people turning around on Wilshire Boulevard. We're creating 2 entrances. We want 2 signs that are attractive because our facility is designed to be beautiful. But they need to be of higher elevation than 8 foot. We could agree to 12 because we want people, if they miss that first sign, to see the second entrance and pull in, and be able to safely brake and pull in. Same with if a fire engine had to come out. We know that our aprons are going to have to be built to accommodate that. We want them to be able to see and slow down and turn in that second entrance, which is why we have planned for 2-way streets inside this development.
Well, let's hear from Ms. Worthen, and then we'll come back to you. Why am I not surprised you're Ms. Wortham?
Was it my enthusiastic nodding in the back?
I think that might have been one of the clues, yes. Give us your name and address, please.
General Worthen, 8201 North Laura Lane, Oklahoma City, 73151.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me here today. We met as a neighborhood community. Laura Lane, we do consider ourselves, albeit a small neighborhood community, and I was voluntold that I would be representing our concerns today.
That's a new word. It's descriptive.
I do want to take a second. I do appreciate Mrs. Toppins reaching out to me in our discussion, and I am grateful for her intentional design of this property. We all moved out there because we enjoyed the agricultural landscape, the quiet serenity, an intentional community out there. But one thing that she did tell me that made it kind of secure that we had to come in opposition of this is that she does intend for this event center to be used beyond weddings. She seemed like a very capable woman, and I have no doubt that this place will be full most days of the week, from corporate retreats to weddings, and the increased traffic flow is a huge concern for us. I don't know if you've been down Wilshire Boulevard lately, but I have a unique position because we lived at a home at Wilshire and Coltrane, and we moved a mile down the road to Laura Lane. So the increase of traffic from I-35 to Sooner Road is a ton of traffic. Then everybody turns left and right on Sooner. Very few, in comparison, I feel, travel on down Wilshire. It is a narrow, precarious, dark road. The entrance that this gentleman referenced is at the top of a hill, and I cannot state this enough. It is a dangerous spot. The spot where they're going to be entering is also directly across the street from our neighbor's driveway. They have a hard enough time not getting rear-ended as people pop up that hill. So I would imagine that people will be, slamming on their brakes to not miss turning in there. It's a huge concern for us. Another thing is definitely neighborhood security. I know that they intend with the second entrance for people to not turn around, but our estimation would be Laura Lane falls right between the 2 entrances. So if they don't know there's a second entrance, they're going to be turning right there on our street and turning around in Mr. Jim's driveway because it's the first one, and he's here today too. I want to list a couple others just as a representative of our neighborhood. We're definitely concerned with the noise issues. I know they intend this to be an inside venue, but I'm in the height of wedding season with my friends, and they're rather loud events. We're concerned with water and sewage issues. All of us are on well water out there. We're concerned of what this would do if they do intend to remain on well, what that does to our supply out there. We're also concerned with the runoff. We're downhill from it, so what does that do to our property? I don't have those answers. The wildlife and forestry issues, one of our neighbors, and unfortunately he couldn't be here today, has done a lot of research on that, and he's very concerned, what does the lighting do for the wildlife that we enjoy out there, those kinds of things. It It was our understanding that part of that other area that was sold off to was going to be for new homes, and I don't know if those people have been made aware of this development. I would be pretty furious if I had just bought a lot and then a big event center went in next door. But I think that one of the biggest issues that we really want to address too is just the alcohol consumption. So, you know, they're wanting to have alcohol at their wedding facility. That's completely normal. But on this dark, narrow, precarious road, we have grave concerns about that. When we head downtown, my husband and I, we often call an Uber service. You know, we're grateful to have those things in the city, but it is a solid 30 minutes to get one of those out to our house, and I have a hard time believing that people are going to plan accordingly and then wait for their ride. So on a dark road with zero shoulder, I'm telling you, if I need to scoot over because someone's in my lane, I'm into trees in about 4 feet. We are just gravely concerned about that safety issue. I've got 2 young boys. We are outside all the time, and Friday and Saturday nights are the height of our week. We're outside at our fire pit, and it is quiet, and that is something that we love. So we would just strongly urge you to vote in opposition. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I respect Ms. Worthen's concerns as to my client, which is why we spoke with her. This is in the city limits, and I understand the desire for country living, but the issue here is Oklahoma City is moving east of I-35. Businesses are going to come. We're designed to be a low-impact business. This is not something that's going to be open every day, all day. It's not certainly going to be serving alcohol every day, all day. That will be dependent upon the customer who can afford to rent this facility. Their caterer will have to have the liquor license, but we've put it into this PUD planning for that. The road issues, you know, Uber's in Pakistan. I know that because I went to Washington, D.C., and you can't rent a car there. People will Uber to this site. I think it's falsely speculatory to say that they won't. Professionals who use this site are probably going to provide for their customers to have an Uber discount so they can go into their Uber app, plug in the Wilshire House, and they'll have a discount ride if they're serving alcohol. That's what most wise business people are doing today. So Uber will come get you if you're broken down on I-35, and there'll be no problem for people who want to Uber to this site if they're going to choose to drink alcohol. Again, the protestant, Ms. Worthen, you know, she's not within our 300-foot radius. She did not get the notice from our mailing. She's actually 700 feet away. She's at the end of Laura Lane. So the distance between our place and her is even greater than that. And because we bought a deep acreage, and because we're going to be putting in more trees than are currently there, the sound issue to us is going to be mitigated. The greatest eliminator of sound is distance. And by buying a 20-acre tract that's deep and putting our facility in the middle, we conscientiously made it so that sound won't carry off our property. And we certainly understand their concerns. That's why we met with her and wanted to be a good neighbor. You know, the entrances, as I explained, yeah, we know people may miss that first entrance, but they'll see our second, especially if it's 12 feet high and lit up, which is what we plan. And we've talked to the Planning Commission about that need. So we disagree with that TE number 4. Well, for some of the same reasons Ms. Worthen does. We're going to have two-way entrances and exits. They're going to be plenty wide, and they're going to be plenty sturdy enough to accommodate all kinds of traffic. Catering trucks or fire engines would be the two biggest. But folks won't be having to turn around on Wilshire Boulevard. They'll see our second entrance. It's a two-way entrance. They'll be able to pull in. And that will eliminate, we feel, a concern. We can't really do much more than we have with our conscientious planning to address Ms. Worthen's concerns. With that, if you have no further questions, I'd ask that you approve the application. I'm happy to answer any more questions you have.
Before anybody does any mission, did you come up so you could hear better, or would you like to speak to us?
Well, I was just saying, in case anybody had questions,
No.
that I could help.
I'm
Put the
Lauren.
microphone down and tell us your name.
Sorry,
You must
I'm-
be the developer, are you?
I'm Lauren Toppins. Yes, I own the land, and the Wilshire House is my idea and concept that I would hope to put together soon and provide for the city of Oklahoma City. So, but what I was wanting to come up here in case there was questions or if there's anything fact-specific that I could help address and hope to alleviate concerns. I understand there's always concerns, but every point that was kind of brought up or questions, we tried to, what we could accommodate or make small changes to help with that. That's what we tried to modify the plan accordingly. So it was something.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, discussion?
Well, I can't support this application. There are just way too many moving parts here. Where to start? It's intended not to be in use every day, but that's not specified. The pedestrian pathway design that's supposed to be shown, I don't see that. No sidewalks. They're not committing to any fencing. The construction of an additional 12,000 square feet is permitted. It would require a specific plan, but they're not intending to do a specific plan on this piece of it. They want EMD signage. I can't support that. Signage they want is way too tall. Their hours of operation are just not reasonable in my view. So, not getting my vote.
Let me add to Janice's comments. The statement of the person that protested, there's a really narrow, dark road with a lot of whiskey being sold at receptions and noise levels with bands, etc. I know what goes on at weddings, wedding receptions, etc. This is all agricultural. This is all way out in the country. 5-acre tracts, people live on them, and this, by approving this, should we do that, you're not just approving what they're planning, but you're also approving another 12,000 square foot other facility at the same time. They've got to come in with a plan, but you're looking at an entire entertainment complex in an area that has no infrastructure. It's agriculture, so I agree with Janice. I can't support it.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move to deny it.
If I may, if that's the position, and I respect Ms. Powers and Mr. Bright's concerns, I would like to talk to my client to move this off perhaps a month so we can meet with you, maybe come up with a more specific plan that you can get behind.
I don't think I ever will. I just think it's inappropriate, just by definition.
Well, I may be able to get the votes of Mr. Cooper, who is in our Ward 7. I mean, I'm thinking if I put this off, and maybe we can't make you happy, but we might make other members of the commission happy to be able to get the requisite vote. So I'd rather we put this off a month so we could study that.
Well, you can choose on whether you want to let them forum shop or whether you want to act today. You made a motion.
Well, there's a way to do that. I'll make a motion to deny the application.
Second.
And we'll see how that goes.
All right. We have a motion and a second to deny the application. Cast your votes. It's denied unanimously.
Thank you very much.
I believe the remainder of our items have been continued, so that was the last case.
Okay. Planning Commission members, anything? Sorry? No, I don't think so. Nothing from Planning Commissioners, Planning Department, Municipal Counselor. The public is us at this point. Did you want to speak, sir? Oh, okay. In that case, we'll adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Done.